a cup of coffee, then I'll go. Thought that I'd just drop by and let you know that I'm leaving town tomorrow. I'll cause you no more sorrow. I'll just have a cup of coffee, then I'll go. I brought the money like the lawyer said to do. It won't replace all the heartaches I've caused you. It won't take the place of loving you, I know. I'll just have a cup of coffee, then I'll go.
Good morning. Welcome to Coffee Time Live, Grand Colombia channel. Welcome to Armenia, Colombia. Weather's been pretty damn nice lately. Today, it's news, and more news. I got a ton of stuff. You know, usually week after week, there's like almost nothing to tell you. And it's just been jam-packed. I don't know what the hell's going on. So I'm going to get right to it. And as we go along, if you have a question about a particular topic, go ahead and throw it in instead of waiting till the end. We'll see if we can do topic by topic. Most of these, I don't really think there's much to question, but there's a couple that we're going to cover that will. And start right off, I want to thank Yuka again. I appreciate it. And Rob, hello, how you doing? I might need a favor from you. Next time you're coming down, I might need you to bring something for me. Sin nombre, going to be a father. Oh, the news, the ton of news. No, the news is Colombia and Ecuador. No, those days are long gone. Dennis, how you doing? C. Bernal, good morning from Palm Bay, Florida. How you doing? Okay, I'm going to start right off here. So interesting things happening around the new president. We may have some pleasant surprises here. So far, and he hasn't even begun yet, but I don't know if you followed Ecuador at all, but when I was living there, they had a socialist president, Correa, very corrupt, put the country in debt, created all kinds of problems. Tyson, we're going to talk about you in a bit. It left it a disaster. Now, his right-hand man, his vice president, man in a wheelchair, he was an avowed socialist. I mean, he would just, that's who he was. And so people were kind of freaking out for the next election, and he actually won. It's like, oh crap. It turned out he was actually a real good president, because what he did was he set all of those ideas aside, and he was basically, he put all his efforts into trying to get Ecuador back on its feet because it had been devastated. And he worked out a lot of agreements with businesses that were, you know, to help people in Ecuador. It was pretty interesting. Well, now we've got a guy here that, you know, none of us seem to be very, very pleased about. One of his first moves was to appoint a guy to the Ministry of Oil, I think it is. I'll just read his quote. Colombia has to explore more and look for more gas deposits. That's fundamental. Colombia's gas reserves are very short. There is also oil, where there are 180 signed contracts. First, we have to see if that's enough, maybe more contracts. But self-sufficiency is a clear objective, and we have to continue looking for deposits and exporting oil, because if not, the balance of payments becomes unmanageable. What fantastic news that is, particularly since the guy went into the election saying he was basically going to pull a Biden, he was going to shut all the oil down. It's not only not happening, but they seem to be coming up with some different idea. Well, it's just one here where he's been working out with the main oil company, Equinor, and they're talking about taking some of the money from exports, because part of that goes to the people of Colombia for the rights to drilling in Colombia. It's not a tax thing that goes to the government. It's distributed to the people. I'll explain that in a minute. They're talking about taking some of that and using that to invest in potential alternative energies, rather than just stop doing oil. Use the oil to help fund the research into something that will work in the Andes and along the coast. So that's all pretty good stuff. Next article. Starting yesterday, the price of gasoline went up, and diesel went up 150 pesos. That's about 4 cents. That's the first. Well, no, it's not the first. It's first increase this year. I mean, gas. They're not public stations, and so the price will fluctuate. You can go to one gas station and go 2 miles away, and there'll be another gas station with a different price. It's not like in Ecuador, they've got kind of fixed pricing. Here, it's not like that. But what they're talking about here is, as I just mentioned, part of the profits from export goes basically to the leaseholders, the people of Colombia. And the way that manifests itself is in the price of the gas sold within Colombia. Now, somebody said, sent me a message a few months back saying, well, the reason Colombia's gas is so cheap, it's like here in Ecuador, it's subsidized by the government. No, in Ecuador, they tax people, take the money from the taxes, and put it into subsidizing gas and gasoline. Gas is in propane gas and gasoline. And that's a whole different program. But if you have essentially leaseholders that are getting a benefit that way, it doesn't come out of taxes, and you don't have to raise taxes. The government doesn't have to manage the taxes. They don't have the opportunity to siphon it off into some other program. So it seems to be pretty effective. They tend to do that, like the Stratus programs that they have. Instead of government managing some huge welfare thing, it's money that goes directly to the people that need it, and it doesn't pass through the hands of government. So it's pretty good. 150 pesos, 4 cents for the gallon. I mean, considering the rest of the world, I mean, it's almost laughable, but it made big news. And we'll talk about Ecuador in a bit, and this topic will come up again. What else we have? We got 2 cases of monkeypox in Colombia. Woohoo! And there was something else here, I think. No, that's it there. Okay, let me delete these, get them out of my face. Get back. Okay. Thanks. I'll be heading back to Colombia. So happy to hear there may be something good happening. Well, we'll see. I mean, it certainly is promising. It's better than the alternative where he came in and made announcements of how he's going to cut the legs off of the #1 export of the country. Okay, So let's get to, we got some others here. All right, this is kind of interesting. I'll show you on the map here. It's El Espinal. Okay, to the right as you're looking at it, you got Bogota, and to the left with all those little map pins, that's Armenia. North of that is Pereira. You got one little map pin, that's Ibagué in the middle, and you see the blue arrow. Well, in this little town, they have active bullfighting. And let me show you what happened to their bullfighting arena. Wait for it. Crazy, right? I don't know any more than that, but I just thought you might want to see that. You get into some of these old stadiums, keep that in mind. Next, what do we have? Last week and into this week, I think ends tomorrow. It's the national celebration of coffee, and it's been going on for 136 years. And it was held this year in Calarca. And from what I understand, the second one 135 years ago was in Calarca, and they haven't sponsored one for the past 135 years. So that's been going on in Calarca. And of more interest, it's tied to the National Coffee Beauty Contest. Now, from what I understand, the winner of this contest goes on to the Miss Universe. Well, there's my mistake. There's an international coffee contest. And you'll see people from the USA and from Venezuela and all over the place in that one. And then I believe that the winner for Colombia, the winner of that one goes to the Miss Universe contest. I might not be right on that. I can sort of read Spanish, but sometimes, I make a little mistake or I just don't quite understand. But tomorrow, they're going to crown the winner. And here's a little video clip of Calarca. in place this past week. This country's kind of in love with pageants, and there's one they have. I don't know when it is, but it's quite hilarious. It's the Ugly Man contest, and they try to come up with the ugliest man in the country. And all I could picture when I was reading about that is, you know, where they do that ugly dog thing, and that thing where it has no hair but tufts sticking out all over and looks like one of those little yip dogs. Well, that's what was coming to mind when I was reading about the Ugly Man contest. They've got beautiful pig contest. They've got a beauty contest for almost everything you can imagine. Papayas. And of course, there's a lot of local pageants of one sort or another. Okay, what do we got next? Oh, here's some more good news. Now, this is in May, but the unemployment rate in Colombia has dropped from, what was it, around 15%? It's down in May, 10.6%. Now, there's word that that's been going up a little bit because there's some seasonal things that come into play. But, you know, it is trending. It is trending pretty well. And then we have for Armenia, it says among the capital cities with the lowest unemployment. But when I actually read the article, this is a translation, a machine translation. But when I read the article, it said that of all the cities in Colombia, Armenia had the lowest unemployment rate as of May. So that's pretty fantastic. And you guys know that watch here regularly that I'm a huge fan of the mayor of Armenia. And I point out all the time, all of these projects that he's working on to bring work into the city, to keep it safe, bringing in those 100 police officers, setting up contracts for, you know, various businesses. And I believe that's why they can make claim to that, at least in May. So that's pretty fantastic. And another bit of hopeful news, Curious Pero. This is my first coffee time visit. Thanks for sharing. I live in Arizona, but visit Colombia, Medellin. Well, then you don't visit Colombia often. Yeah, I saw you came in at the very end just as I was signing off last week. So welcome to coffee time. It's good to get fresh faces in here. Not that the old faces aren't bad. Many of them have become my friends. Okay, so another hopeful sign. Again, if you followed me very long, you'll know that I'm also a big fan of Uribe. Now, he's been taking a hit the last handful of years through a lot of propaganda, a lot of accusations. He led death squads and all that. None of it came to pass. It was all political accusations, would only come up at particularly expedient moments. The reason I'm a fan is, you know, when I lived here 20 years ago, FARC was rampant everywhere, including here. And when he became president, he actively went about destroying them. And Medellin used to be a city of, it was a nightmare. It was, if you lived in Medellin, go back 20 some years, if you lived in Medellin, you lived in a barrio. And after 6 o'clock, many of those barrios, you couldn't even leave that barrio. And anytime that you were leaving that barrio and going into another, you had to pay a toll. Now, who was doing that? They were all criminals. They were out on the streets, and they owned Medellin for the most part. It was horrible. My ex-wife had a number of relatives there, and so I was getting a lot of firsthand stories about what was happening. So Uribe came in and he said, enough is enough. And he flew helicopters over Medellin, and the military rappelled down. They went from house to house and arrested or shot and basically cleared the city. Okay, I'm putting all this kind of in a synopsis, in a nutshell. So, some people can nitpick a little, but that's essentially what occurred. And it was, granted, it was far more complex than that. But Medellin is what it is today as a direct result of the actions that he took 20 some years ago. And so I've been a big fan of his, but he's become a pariah because of the left propaganda against him. And if you ask anybody that's under 30 years old, maybe under 35 years old, they're not going to remember that he was a national hero for a number of years. And actually, they wanted to keep him in office. They wanted to change the Constitution because he was such a hero. They forget that. So younger people who didn't even know this, they hear all that propaganda and they think he's just a terrible person. So this is heartening because, let me put it up here, Petro invited Uribe to sit down and talk, and he's saying about a national agreement. Basically, let's see if we can heal up what's going on. Now, it's a little ironic because the supporters of Petro were the people that were putting all this stuff out there, but it has gotten pretty toxic. In the last couple of years, you've seen some of the stuff that's been going on every, once or twice a year. It's ugly. And so that's kind of good news. I'm surprised that he even wants to meet with him because of, it would be kind of like if Biden decided he was going to sit down and have a powwow with Trump. I mean, there's no way that would ever happen, right? So it's similar to something like that. And so, that's pretty heartening. Sounds like Uribe was a Rudy Giuliani. Yeah, pretty much like that. Go Sun Devils. Greetings from Thailand. How you doing, Craig? The ganja capital of Asia. Where do you think the dollar will go from here? Well, this morning was what, 42.05, I think. It keeps going up. Well, I mentioned a while ago that that it would go up a number of weeks ago because if this guy won, that there would be investments pulling out that would weaken the peso. Therefore, the dollar would be stronger, and so the dollar would go up. But if he keeps going down the path that he's going down, we're going to see it probably settle back down. Colombia has been a good place to invest. So if you're an international person and you're type that's going to invest in various countries, Colombia has been a real good place. They don't, investors don't know, nobody knows the future. And so there was a lot of investments that were pulled back. But if he keeps making these moves, I think that'll settle down those anxieties and position Colombia for investments again. And what that'll do is it'll strengthen the peso, and therefore our exchange rate, will settle back down. But the way I've looked at it is anything over 2,800 is gravy. So if you're budgeting, don't budget on 4,000. Don't budget on 3,500. Go back over 10 years and pick a low point. There was a particular time it dropped like below 2,000 for a very short period. That was a real anomaly. You go back 20 years and that was one anomaly, and the rest of the time it's, over 2,000. So, if you're looking to budget here and you want to figure out a base budget, like the worst case will be, what can I afford to live? And that's what you're going to base your rent and things like that. Then do it based on, like I did, I chose 2,800. And anything beyond that becomes gravy, becomes windfall. So just because the peso goes up, if your budget for rent, for example, was based on 28, don't go rent beyond that just because the peso's up. Oh, well, the peso's up, so I can afford to go and, drop $500, $600, whatever. Because if it goes back down, now what? Now you're screwed. So, so just kind of keep your expenses low, just like anybody. Try to keep your overhead low, and just enjoy it when it's up. Budget like a Canadian. I don't know about that. Maybe. Okay. Now we're going to do a little bit about Ecuador. There's a lot of people who haven't noticed, but people that have sent me a message, and I said, well, just hold off and I'll talk about it in coffee time. All right, here we go. This is about 3 minutes long, and when it's over, then I'll discuss with you, I got 4 key points.
A worsening economy in Ecuador and violence on the streets of its capital, Quito. Rising prices and shortages of food and fuel have led to more than a week of protests, called by a powerful movement of indigenous groups. Dozens of people have been injured in the demonstrations, calling for government action.
The national government has given us a document with imprecise ideas in which it states they have responded to our demands, despite the level of generality and lack of political will shown towards the indigenous movement of Ecuador.
Thousands of indigenous Ecuadorians have taken part in the rallies. Although they make up only a small part of the country's near 18 million population, they have strong political influence through the Indigenous Nationalities Confederation. Amnesty International has accused the government of repressing the protests, saying it's causing a human rights crisis in Ecuador. The president has extended a state of emergency and is calling for calm.
We are attending to the legitimate demands of the citizens, but their response is more violence. We cannot allow a few violent people to prevent millions of Ecuadorians from working, and we will not allow people to be pitted against people.
The defense minister says the demonstrations are damaging democracy and pledged to stop them. The indigenous movement is calling for an indefinite strike. With no sign of compromise on either side, many fear the conflict could escalate. Gillian Wolfe, Al Jazeera.
This is a YouTuber in Cotocachi last week, so I thought you might want to see this. This is just your neighborhood supermarket. But this has been all over Ecuador, and what's been going on has been going on for over 3 weeks.
Acuerdo en Ecuador para poner fin a 18 días de protestas. El gobierno de Guillermo Lasso ha acordado con el movimiento indígena y campesino levantar las movilizaciones a cambio de algunas concesiones. El gobierno se ha comprometido a derogar el estado de excepción, bajar en 15 centavos de dólar el precio de los combustibles, 5 más de lo que ofrecía Lasso, y a aprobar un paquete de medidas sociales para aliviar a las familias campesinas. Además, se declara en emergencia el sector sanitario y se dejarán de otorgar concesiones mineras y petroleras en reservas naturales. La gran movilización antigubernamental, que comenzó el 13 de junio por la carestía de la vida, ha dejado 6 fallecidos, entre ellos un militar, y medio millar de heridos. El diálogo, que se inició el pasado lunes y el gobierno rompió un día después por la violencia contra las autoridades, ha sido posible por la mediación de la Conferencia Episcopal Ecuatoriana.
Yeah, it's been ugly, and a lot of people are kind of panicked. You've got a lot of expats that were bailing out of Ecuador, mostly newer ones that didn't really understand what was going on. Now, in that Al Jazeera, the first part of that clip, they stated that it was the cost of living. Well, of course, cost of living is a problem, but that's not the actual basis. What causes this is it comes up pretty much every year. A couple of years ago, where they burnt down a high-rise in Quito, created all kinds of damage and devastation. It's been an ongoing thing. It's actually the cost of gas, as in propane gas. Most of Ecuador does its cooking with these propane tanks, and they only cost. Well, I think I was paying $2 for a big old 40-gallon tank, larger than like the ones you'd see in the U.S. And they're subsidized. They're subsidized by the government. And when they instituted that subsidy some years ago, it was supposed to be a temporary measure. Well, like all government programs, temporary becomes permanent. And every time they want to repeal it, because Ecuador is running in the red, they've got debts that Correa ran up. He spent a lot of money from China. These debts are due. Their health system, which they nationalized, one-payer national system, it runs bankrupt every year. They've got huge financial issues, but every time they want to do the repeal on the gas subsidy, this is what you get. And they had announced a month or so ago that they were going to repeal it, and here we go. So that's really the the real root cause. And like I mentioned, it's been going on 18, 19 days, about 3 weeks. And the empty shelves are because they've been blocking deliveries all over the country. And so you've had this issue for a while. And, it's tough to deal with, particularly if you don't understand how Ecuador works and you're living there. It can be real confusing and you think it's going to be the end of the world. Now, third point I want to make is the agreement that towards the end here, you talk about this agreement that's signed. Not exactly. What they've done is they've postponed everything that's been going on for 90 days. So the government has 90 days to come up with a proposal for this mob. They say, well, it's indigenous. Well, it's all kinds of, it's not just indigenous, first of all. And it's a proposal to what? To the people of Ecuador? I mean, don't you have a government where you vote on issues and you have representatives? No, we have mob rule, takes to the streets. If you don't like it, we're going to burn the place down. And that's Ecuador for you. And so the government has 90 days to come up with an agreement that some of their self-appointed leaders of the mob can sit down and agree with. And I don't know. The demands they're making are untenable. So we'll see. But we got a 3-month reprieve if you're living in Ecuador. And I know there's people that say, well, I'm not going to move to Ecuador. Well, I'm not living in Ecuador, and it's not because of there's a whole range of reasons I'm not. Great place to visit, though. Number 4 point, you notice that I stopped and did a freeze frame on that Antifa flag. I just want to point that out because I've mentioned before that Antifa is worldwide. And I've mentioned before that in the protests a couple years ago or last year, the one in Cali that really kind of blew up, that Antifa is behind the violence of it. And I got lots of, don't remember how many, but you could count them on 2 hands, people writing to me telling me I'm crazy and I'm a conspiracy nut and this and that. And it's like, no, I got 2 eyes. I know what's going on. It's an international brand, and their purpose is to create chaos. And what happens is they embed themselves into protests wherever there's funding behind them. So they're paid to do this. And so what they do is they'll be, let's say they're in a protest that's got 2,000 people. There might be 15 of them, but they get the violence rolling. They're the ones that start throwing the bricks and the stones that get the police to react, and then, try to make a bigger mess. That's exactly what happened in Cali. They tried to do that here in Armenia, and they arrested, 14, 15 of them. They arrested them. And turned out only one was actually from Armenia. Most of them weren't even from Colombia. And they arrested them because the people where they were trying to do this, where they were firebombing that police station, the people went and got the cops, pointed them out, because the people weren't going to they didn't join in. They were pretty pissed off that this was happening. And so, it's kind of different here. It backfired on them. But it's not new. This has gone on for a while. And so I freeze frame that because, to you people that just don't want to believe what you're seeing, well, there you go. There you can see it. That was in Quito. Those were two, the black and the red, those were two Antifa flags. They often don't advertise themselves like that, but I seized the moment to freeze frame that for you so that you could see, look, I'm not crazy. I know what I'm talking about here. And so don't tell me that they don't really exist when they have websites. And don't tell me that they're not international when they pop up like this in Europe. They were in Italy when they had those COVID riots. They're all over the world, and they are funded. Okay, enough of that. I've only been here for 2 months, but I've been managing to stay comfortable during the paro. That's good. Basically, you just kind of hang out at your place and go out when it's quiet, and most of that takes place in certain areas, so it's not like citywide, and there's a good chance of wherever you're staying, you're not seeing any of it. So, so it's not that bad, but it's bad wherever it's happening. Do you think groups like FARC will flourish under the new president, or will it keep them cool and calm? Well, I'm going to hope for the best because we don't know the future. But here's the thing. The last president, who was actually supported by Uribe, the last president, Duque, sucked at this because he was a coward. He would not act when he should have acted. He had many opportunities. He flew a helicopter over in Cucuta, where the ELN is in control along that border, and they shot at him. They shot holes in the helicopter. What did he do? Did he send in the military? Did he respond in fort? No. He turned the helicopter around, ran away, never went back. I mean, it's not that I'm a hawk, but when you have a bully, the only way to stop a bully is to stand up to him. And that's how these things work. And so what's happened is during Duque's reign, these groups have been growing. The Golpo, the narco group that's north of Medellin along the coast, they're actually getting rather close to Medellin, and they have operatives in Medellin now. You have the FARC that are really strong just west and south of Cali. They used to only be down along the Ecuador border of Colombia. Well, now they've spread all up the side, and they've kind of spilled out. I know somebody that lives in a small pueblo south of Cali, and they control the roads. They decide who's going to pass or not. This shouldn't happen. And not to pick on Afro Wahira because I'm a huge fan, but she kept saying in that video that I critiqued last week that you know, it's all over. So let's just kind of disarm and take advantage of the money that was lost. It's grown again. And if you don't beat it back, it will just continue to get stronger because they are criminals and drugs fund a lot of their operation, and they've become basically a franchise of Mexico. And when you have that kind of money, that buys you a lot of control. And so if you don't make their life miserable, they're going to grow. So that's my concern of what has happened. I can't imagine it will be worse with him. And my feeling is that what's been happening over the last handful of years is really pissing off people that live in these areas. And I think at some point they're going to have to act on this again. I've thought about doing an entire video, but I brought it up a few times, particularly, I think it was last week, I gave some information on it, and I don't want to beat a dead horse. And it's places like the Coffee Triangle, Manizales, and Armenia, and Ibagué. I mean, we're so far away from it. You know, it's kind of like talking about murders in Chicago when you're living, in Tennessee. It just doesn't apply. And so all these things that I'm talking about where I'm living, it has no effect on me. But it affects Colombia, and the larger they get, the more difficult it's going to be. So I don't, like I say, this guy, as much as I hate to see him in his position, I don't think we had good options. I would have preferred Hernandez, and he had some very interesting things. But, he's older than, he's about the same age as Biden, I think. And, he's about as corrupt as, I don't know. I don't think we had good options. And I think that's part of how Petro won, is people looked and said, we don't really have good options. Okay, last thing before I get to some official Q&A. I thought you might find this interesting, particularly the guy who visits Medellin. This is some of what happens in Medellin. I'll be ready to type your comments when this is over. I want to get your impressions. So everybody watching, get on those comments, and when this is over, I want your opinion.
Uy, marica. Un gringo en el barrio, marica, vea, un gringo. Uy, marica, un gringo, ¿cómo así?
Estoy gringo. Pero I've been stuck here. No te entiendo. I know you don't understand, but necesito no comida. Sí, gracias. No comiendo 2 días, 2 days, 2 días. No como. No. Nada.
Uy, marica, un gringo perdió aquí en el barrio. Muchachas, disculpe, es que quiero grabar esto para ponernos en las redes.
Trabajando conmigo, pero I got stuck here. Sí, room, corto. Oh, muchas gracias. Right now, en este momento necesito cuarto, habitación. ¿Dónde dormir? No dormir, sí, jugar, sí. Sí. Muchas ayuda. ¿Cómo? ¿Necesitas ayuda? Dinero, si no.
Yo creo que ese parcero está perdido, que es ese parcero gringo aquí. ¿De dónde es usted? Pero pregúntele dónde es él, amigo.
Muchas gracias. ¿Dónde? No, sí, ¿dónde? Estados Unidos, American, gringo, pero I was working here, trabajando conmigo, pero I got stuck, and this helps a lot. Thank you so much. Muchas Muchísimas gracias.
No, magnífico. Mucho bendiga, mucho. Bendiciones.
So I write books, escribo libros online, Amazon. So I was working.
libros en Amazon.
Sí. A tour. Pero I got stuck in Medellín and.
Marica, yo voy a seguir grabando esto.
But this helps a lot. I'm trying to find places. Gracias.
Gracias.